everyone! Welcome to Therapy Tip Tuesday. My name is Amanda and I'll be sharing some fun therapy tips with you the next couple of weeks. Okay, so for today's therapy tip, we'll be talking about targeting expressive and receptive language, answering yes and no questions, recalling details, as well as ways to enhance vocabulary, identify attributes, and develop categorical awareness. So for our activity, I will be referencing the popular game, Headbands. However, if you don't have this game in your toy closet, you could actually modify the activity by playing the game I Spy, which we're all super familiar with. So for those of you who are not familiar with the game Headbands, it's super fun and very easy to use. It usually comes in a box with a couple of different headbands that you could change the size of. And everyone puts on a headband. It's usually played with multiple people, and each player will pick a card. You don't look at your card though, and then you put your card facing all the other players in the headband, and the goal of the game is to try to guess what your item or object is. However, you need the help of the other people that are playing with you, and you have to ask yes or no questions, and they have to respond without giving away what your item is. So it's really fun. So for this game, you could work on receptive language here by listening to the questions that people ask about their picture and making sure that we really understand what is being said in order to provide them with clues. And then expressive language here would be how we could help the other people who we're trying to help them guess their card describe what is on their card. Sometimes though, describing objects can be a little bit tricky, so I like to use this handout. This is super helpful. And this way, we can follow this handout to help us figure out different ways that we can describe and use different types of vocabulary, use different categories to help other people figure out what their item or object is. Okay, so here is our handy dandy handout. Perfect. So we're going to start with this section over here, which is green group. And this is a perfect place to start because it gives you a nice general amount of information, but it's still important. So the question here is, what group does it belong in? And here we have an example of fruit. So if this was your card picture of grapes, your category would be fruit, and that would help you narrow in on what your picture could be. Next we have blue do, and this is awesome if you're targeting verbs because these are all different actions that possibly maybe the object or item on your forehead, on your card, is able to do. So jumping, hugging, eating. So for my example of a dog, I could ask, does it play with toys? So we would be talking about our word play here. Next we have what does it look like? So we have our eye, and we could also talk about vocabulary here. We could talk about different shapes. We could talk about different sizes and different colors. And for our older kids, we could talk about adjectives. So further ways to add detail to what our object could be. Next we have brown made. What is it made of? This might not apply to everything, but sometimes it's important. So if you're talking about wood, then you would know it's hard. If you're talking about rubber, maybe you could say it's stretchy. Next we have pink parts. This is great too. So for my example of a dog, if I'm trying to guess the item on my forehead and it happens to be a dog, the parts of a dog could be the tail, the fact that it has 4 legs, and a wet nose. And then lastly, we have white where. So this is great too because this helps us figure out where we can find the item or object that is on our card. And this is also great for spatial concepts as well, such as in and on. Because when we're asking our yes or no question, so we'll go back to my example again of a dog, I would say, does this animal, since I know it's an animal, live on a farm? Or does it live in a house? Even though this game is super fun and can get a little bit silly, I always find it super helpful to tell my clients to write down all the clues that we're getting throughout the game. That way we could go back, we could talk about any vocabulary words that we're not familiar with. We can define them. We could even put them into a sentence to help us remember better. We can discuss the different categories and maybe go into the categories a little bit more, especially if we're not familiar with that. And it's also helpful if you're working on memory skills, so you can go back, because I know trying to remember all those different clues while you're playing a game and having fun can be hard. So writing it down is key. At the end of the game, I also like to ask my clients about 3 different details that they remember that help them figure out what it was that was on the picture on their head. This way, you can target your expressive and receptive language, as well as any new vocabulary that was discussed during the game, while also working on those memory skills that help us recall details. You could even take it a step further by asking your child to make a sentence with the new vocabulary they learned from the game, providing support and cues when necessary. Okay, so for the modified version of headbands, if you don't happen to have the game, you could play I Spy. But for this version, instead of having the item on your head and the other people guessing, you could start with one of these categories and write down any object, any animal, a vehicle, a car, whatever it is, on a piece of paper. Don't show anyone, and then you could say, okay, I spy an animal, and then take it from there. So again, you're kind of going backwards, but you could go through each group so then the other players in the game can eventually figure out what it was that you chose, that you want them to guess. Okay, and that is the end of our Therapy Tip Tuesday for today. I hope that you guys found this video helpful, and I hope that next time, if you happen to play any of these games, you think of these tips to incorporate language with your kids. All right, have a good day.